hello, my name is Avery, and I'm freaking the fuck out all the time. If you're like me, you're also probably having an existential crisis every freaking day. So I'm gonna go through and just talk about like, maybe why that's happening. A lot of shit going on. So here's some things that I wanna go over. One, also I have a sore throat, so I apologize. Let's look at some politics. Let's look at some technology. How about some economics? And some geopolitics. I believe that was all of what I wanted to get. So basically, right? I'm gonna double check real quick that I can see all this on the camera. Great, perfect. So you might have noticed everything is a little bit insane politics-wise. Today is the day that Dining T and Elon had their falling out. Gotta say, quite entertaining. I love to see it. Waiting to see what happens with that. But, oh goodness, I needed one more. I'll include that under politics. But rhetoric. Rhetoric is important too. So, politics, what's happening? Well, first and foremost, we got like a semi-fascist thing going on. I was gonna draw a fascist icon, but then I don't know what that would be. Fasci. Not good. The good news is they're like kind of shitty fascists, right? And this has been happening for like, I don't know, since Trump got in, right? Basically, we're doing strong arm government, trying to centralize a lot of authority. We've seen sort of this like legislative abdication of power that's really not great. And the only sort of solace is that they're kind of stupid. They're a little bit dumb, all the fascists, but they're all in there. I'm here in DC. They're all here in DC, fascisting it all up, right? But again, incompetent. So we've got that going for us. What else? Oh, let's talk about the dems. So we've got a center-right party and we've got a far-right party. And right now, the things that are happening is that the center-right party is in power because the far-right party is in power, the Republicans, because the center-right party, the Democrats, are shitty. They're shitty. Americans, this is important, the Overton window, right? The Overton window has been fucking obliterated. I need to make sure you can see the rhetoric thing too. You can, okay, great. So, I heard this the other day, and I thought this was great. But the Overton window, right? The place where all of the politics is, our collective headspace for politics, what is palatable and we're allowed to say, right? It's supposed to be like a spectrum, and then on the spectrum of things, this is like the thing, and this is the Overton window, right? You can say things within like this area here. That's where things are palatable to say. But now, social media has fucking obliterated us. It has ruined discourse and put us into literally alternate realities. We live in different truths now, right? And I would say this first started with climate change, where like, that to me is the first instance of like, okay, like scientific instruments reading different things are just going to be outright denied by people, right? So now the Overton window has been ripped in half, and it exists something like this. And this is in red because the Overton window splitting is maybe bad, maybe good, we'll see. But it's a big change, right? So now, like, shit don't exist in the middle. And again, going back to this, the issue is the center-right party keeps trying to like be in here, but nobody's there anymore. Nobody's there. We're all like free healthcare or kill every immigrant. That's where we're at right now. And we have to figure out, or Democrats have to fucking stop being the center-right party and become an actual either center-left as the rest of the world, according to like the rest of the world's standards, where it's like universal healthcare, you know, free education, things that like make the economy go well and reduce poverty, right? But that's not gonna happen. So that's where we're at right now. And this is my world, my like day-to-day world, because I I'm a political science major, and I love watching politics. I'm a Hasanabi head, as it were. I don't know if that's embarrassing, but if it is, oh well. And so this is where I'm at. This is what I think about on my day-to-day. But that's not quite existential enough. It's very existential in terms of politics, right? But it's not quite big enough. Now, I've got some colors here, and I'm gonna do some of this tech stuff in blue, because I think tech stuff is like scary, but it could be good or bad. Good or bad, right? These are just like the facts of how it is. I don't know. The color coordination is gonna be random. That's what I'm gonna tell you right now. Technology. We have a lot of automation coming up very soon. A lot of automation. I'm talking AI, I'm talking robotics, I'm talking like bio shit. I'm talking, I mean, even computers are gonna change. The way that computers even work, right? It's gonna go crazy. Now, I've got a few different things that I wanna say about this. I think it's gonna be way fast. It's only gonna speed up faster. On my regular Twitter doom scrolling earlier today, I was seeing a thing that I've been saying. If you know me, I've been saying this for like months or maybe a year at this point, that like, oh, you know, one of the first things to be automated is gonna be last mile delivery, doing like the Amazon delivery services with all your packages, right? Basically just from the truck to the house, very simple, move box from A to B. That's like probably one of the first things that's gonna get automated. I've been seeing some inklings on Twitter that people are like, yeah, actually Amazon is now looking into using humanoid robotics to do all these deliveries now. And it's like, oh, look, we're going there. We're like right there, right? What else is going on? I could talk about, we have driverless cars already that are really just waiting to like become the norm, but we have that technology possible now, right? We just have to get it good enough to work in like bad weather and yada, 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 right? Simultaneously, we have autonomous semi-trucks now that are on the roads, right? Again, not the norm, but it's where we're at and it's where we're going. Like in the next 10 years, I think probably most trucks will be automated. Why wouldn't they? It's probably gonna be way cheaper, more efficient. I'm not gonna fucking pay somebody to do it, you know? So this is gonna happen big time. And that's gonna really fuck up the economy. So let's move over to the economic shit. Also, a lot of other cool stuff is gonna happen here. Like I think anti-aging technology is gonna go kind of insane. Probably like micro robotics, and it's gonna be bonkers. And this is like, I'm not even mostly concerned about the AI stuff. The AI stuff I think will be good and very helpful and will probably expedite everything. But really I think the robotics automating most menial labor is gonna be the shit that goes crazy and pops off. And like changes human life the most, right? And I should have mentioned at the start of this, this is me going over everything. What the fuck is happening? What is going on in the world? I don't know. Actually, I do know, and that's why I'm putting it all up on the board here. Economics. This one is a red one. This one is very red. There was this book I read that pretty much transformed everything that I view or think about economics. Not transformed, clarified. It is Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. And he had some great shit to say on this. Basically, he explains how, I'm gonna explain like the basic thing. I forget exactly what it is, but it's like, I wanna say it's R over G, R over G. The return of capital over the rate of economic growth, right? The increase of GDP year over year. So the critical thing here is basically wealth inequality. Wealth inequality will always fundamentally increase on a mathematical basis. And here's how he sort of sorts this out. So we have capital, right? We know that some income in an economy, there is like a total massive income that exists. There is a sum of all of it that happens in a year. And I think in a healthy economy, I want to say it's like 70% goes to labor. So, you know, that's like people with wrenches and people with pencils making shit. And we're doing stuff. We're Yeah, we're working, we're moving the world. And then 30% of it goes to capital, which is just the dollar bills, And capital is obviously just different assets, right? A dollar is not a very productive capital asset, but something like a factory is a productive capital asset. A home is a productive capital asset. It's just that it gives you financial returns. It gives you like quality of life returns, or it does give you financial returns if you're, owning a bunch of them and then renting them out. So this is what it typically is and is supposed to be in a healthy economy, right? Now, here's the thing. There is always going to be a ratio of the amount of capital that exists versus the amount of output in a year. Now, what do I mean by that? For a single year's output, there's a number of years of total capital, right? If you take the value of all the shit that is, the value of all the houses, all the companies, all the stocks, the bonds, everything together is an amount of stuff, right? And typically, once you balance out the debt with the claims on the debt and all that. And again, typical economy, it's about 6 to 1. So there is 6 times the value of 1 year's output of GDP, if that makes sense. So the US's output of GDP, I think, is like 25 trillion or 30 trillion or something in that range. So assuming this, that means the total value of all US assets is probably something to the tune of 150 trillion to 180 trillion dollars, right? That's all of the value. That's how much shit is in the US. Now, again, let's return to this. 30% of income goes to capital, and there is 600% of a year's output in capital. So that means that on average, capital returns 5% of itself as income, right? Whatever the value of your capital is. So again, say a factory. A factory is like on average, more productive asset than most other assets. But assets give you a return on value, right? So if you have 600% of your economy in stuff, and you each of that multiply it by 0.05, average 5% return, right? And I don't know if that's what the numbers actually are, but that's the one that I use for my example. Then that means, boom, 30% of income goes to capital by definition, right? Does that make sense? It's all using, it's definitionally, because capital is at 600% of income, gives this average amount of return, 30% of all income must then go to capital. Now the thing is, what's been happening is not only does wealth inequality increase and the amount of capital gets owned by fewer and fewer people and kind of like gets all slurped up into the top, that happens. But what else happens is one of two things. Either growth slows. Now, if growth slows, that means that the amount of stuff, you've got this is our big heaping pile of gold and rubies, right? This is all of it's a sparkling pile of shit. This is all our stuff that we have going on. And if there's less growth in the economy, that means this has more relative importance. Does that make sense? So as growth of the economy slows, this ratio of capital to total economic output goes higher. So this number here increases. And when this number increases, say it goes up to 700% instead. Then all of a sudden, this comes up to 35%. 35%. So now, we switched it. And 65% of income goes to labor, Well, 35% of income goes to capital, right? Now, this shit really sucks because most people make their money by working. I certainly don't have fucking a huge ass retirement portfolio. So the thing is, what happened historically, right? After World War II, a bunch of shit went down. There was a bunch of capital that was destroyed, right? A bunch of capital was destroyed. This pile gets smaller because, people had to liquidate things in order to fund the war, and there was the actual shit that got destroyed in and of itself. So now it's like a big old stinky pile. Not as much stuff, which means the amount of economic growth that was happening relatively was more important. So the growth that was going on reduced it. It was something like, say 300%. So now you have less total capital relative to the production of the economy. And again, still keeping this 5% number, bam, oh wow, that's incredible. Well, look at this shit. That's fucking bonkers. Now we've got it where it's only like 15% going to capital, if I did the math right, which makes it where, oh my God, income matters so much more. Post World War II, the amount of income going to labor is more significant. Your labor actually does matter more, right? The world was more meritocratic after World War II because there was a huge destruction of capital. The more capital that accumulates, the less and less your merit matters because capital begets capital, right? Am I making sense here? I hope so. And this is a mathematical thing. I probably explained it really poorly, but seriously, go read Capital in the 21st Century. Excellent. The point is, we've reached a period of relative economic stagnation because everyone kind of caught up. Once you're in a developed economy, it's really hard to sort of push the boundary and continue to grow a lot. So economic growth ends up being like 3%, right? It ends up being like 3%, which means capital will always take a larger share because capital is always giving a higher amount than the growth of the economy. And that's the thing. After World War II, the growth of the economy was relatively high because everyone was rebuilding. There was less stuff, so you could grow things faster, if that makes sense, relative to what existed at the time. But now, that's not how it is. So wealth is going to naturally, no matter what, outpace labor. No matter if, the fucking Democrats negotiate drug prices. No matter what happens, as long as this is not dealt with, where capital has a higher rate of return than the income of labor, or than the growth of the economy, relatively, the share of labor will always shrink. Income's share of labor will always shrink, while the share of income for capital will always increase. And we know that this is incredibly inegalitarian, right? Where the people right up here at the tippy top have fucking everything. So, that's our economic situation. That's where we're at. This is how it exists. Couple good things. The economy is still growing exponentially. This is true. And some people have advocated for degrowth, and I think that's a nuanced position to take. But I think it's good that the economy grows exponentially. I think that gives us a lot of room to try and fight poverty. That's what we should do. And we have enough resources, IMO, to eliminate poverty today if we wanted to, at least in some place like the United States, right? But we don't. Also, I think it's more efficient when you eliminate poverty. But, so there's all that. That's what's going on right now. Now let's move on to some geopolitics. Basically, it's just USA is declining. Way bad. And China is on the up and up. I see China propaganda all the time and I eat that shit up, I'm not even gonna lie. I see them with their fast-ass trains. I see them with their great dense housing. They have the largest and some beautiful, incredibly technologically advanced cities. Their technology is popping off. Their universities are popping off. I saw something the other day where it was like feelings of warmness towards either China or the US, and a lot of longtime US allies are starting to begin to feel a little bit more warmly towards China rather than the US, because the US is basically having the equivalent of like a toddler's tantrum right now, politically. That's the fascism. It's a toddler tantrum because we don't know what's going on. USA declining, China going up. We'll see if that happens, because all these other things, if China surpasses them or whatever, I think the answer, personally, is intercooperation. And I think that's been happening slowly through globalization anyways. And I think, like, our conceptions of nations will become, like, slowly more and more intertwined over the next 100 years. So this competition might not end up mattering as much. I don't think the, like, very competitive mindset that most of, like, international politics and, like, game theorists, you know, use to analyze this, I don't think that'll be the most relevant theory anymore for very long, because of globalization and this, like, cultural interconnection that's going on. Okay. So, also, rhetorically, again, people are starting to live in fantasy worlds because of AI. AI is, well, not even AI yet. AI now is starting to break us, our brains, like, so bad. But social media was already doing that, right? Social media started splitting us this way. And I'm, like, very far on the left. This is me over here. Like, I describe myself as, like, a socialist, full stop, right? But I don't even think most of the people, like, on the left I don't think most people are very intelligent when it comes to politics. I think most people are pretty intelligent, just not in politics. Like, we don't focus on it enough. And when we do, it's only in this social media form, right? And the thing with social media, you know, politics is just collective psychology, right? And social media is really good at getting us to go, or, so it's really good at repelling us, and it creates these straw mans, right? So we see, like, these big, big monster, big monster on both sides. And this is politics. It's Democrats and Republicans seeing each other as horrific freaks. Now, don't get me wrong, I think a lot of Republican policies are horribly horrific. But that's because the voters are actually down here, right? Like, what most people actually believe, they're just kind of bitty. And I just think these people on the right, I think, are just coming at it from literally a different era, different cultural time. And their brains weren't developed to live and process information in the day and age that we're in now. I grew up with that, and I like to think of myself as a critical thinker. So I would like to think I'm able to parse that information relatively well. But a lot of these people aren't, you know? We don't have a lot of critical media consumption. But the thing is, what happens is social media presents this to these people. They go, ah. And simultaneously, on the left, it presents leftists, or people on the left, see this caricature of Republicans, and then they both move this way, right? Some people stay here in the middle because they know people on both of these, and they're just confused and sad. To really simplify it, right? So, because of this, we've seen the Overton window just completely break in half, right? But also, like, this is not an accurate view of reality, right? And I think, like I said, it's very easy to make basically these straw mans. Social media is excellent at creating straw mans. Like, sometimes I forget that my father is a relatively reasonable person, even though, like, the policies that he believes in are sort of, like, demonic, right? It's like, oh, you would willingly vote for someone that would be willing to, like, erase a lot of my trans friends out of existence. Very interesting, Dad. That, to me, like, is a demonic policy. And here's the thing. I think this is genuinely, like, there is a connection here. There is demonic policy that happens because of this. But that's only because the politicians see this on social media as well and think they can get away with it. And then these people just aren't locked in enough to recognize how demonic it really is. Because most people don't care about politics that much or think about it every day in their life, which is why uninformed people are now the voters for the Republican Party. Simultaneously, Democrats are shitty. They don't do anything, like I said, center-right party. And where was I going with this? Something rhetoric. We don't have an accurate view of reality anymore. Like, this to me is what I think is going on and what we should structure policy around. But we don't, because we're focused on the shit that social media has done to us. And AI is basically getting us to throw away that critical thinking even further. I'm gonna check that this is still rolling. Okay. AI is basically getting us to abdicate our critical thinking skills. I'm very worried about Gen Alpha, just like millennials were worried about me and Gen Z, and everyone else has been worried about everyone else who's younger than them for all the time. But I'm especially worried because we are just throwing away a lot of our thinking skills to these things, and I think so much of thinking, so much of being able to solve a problem comes from being willing to tussle with stuff in your mind and mull it over and think about it. But we don't, you can get a correct answer from AI, but you don't mull it over and think about it. And there's a lot of development that happens in the intellectual tussle. So, where do I see things going? What the fuck is going on? And this is where I'm gonna tie this into what I personally am gonna be trying to do for my life, and career. I think one of the biggest, most important things that's happening, I'm gonna use green for this one because I do think this is a good thing actually, is this. I think technology is gonna make shit insane. Well, you can't see the green very well, so I'm not gonna use that one. But technology is really gonna change the game. As technology always does. Technology is what allows the economy to grow exponentially, and what I think ultimately gives us the opportunity to defeat poverty, which to me is the greatest moral imperative. Nobody should live in poverty. We should try to minimize human suffering, and then from there on we can try and minimize natural suffering as well. We'll get to there when we get to there, right? But this is gonna fuck everything else up. Now, why do I think that? Well, let's go back to this, right? Income going towards labor, income going towards capital. The fundamental issue with Democrats is that they are willing to let this keep going like this, right? Now, Republicans are actively trying to get this to go faster. Democrats, I don't think, are trying to go faster, but it's going to anyways, because all of this works exponentially, right? So, what happens from here on out? Well, soon, I think it'll be that very little, and by soon I mean let's say 15, 20 years. I personally think it'll probably happen faster than that. But soon it'll be even less will go to labor. And even more will go to capital. Because capital, AI, and robots, and all these things, will be able to do most of the functions of the economy autonomously. People are like, oh, I can't do it autonomously now. Of course I can't do it right now. It's in the baby phases, right? It's all in the baby steps. But importantly, I wanted to make a note on this too. I'm running out of space. I think about automation like this, especially with how technology works now. There's a billion tech companies all trying to automate everything at the same time. So they're all doing it kind of shittily, right? So you've got this piece over here that gets automated. And let's say this is being able to feel fabric and move fabric well. That's a huge problem right now for robotics. And then one is being able to recognize things well physically in the environment. We've gotten pretty good at that using cameras and LiDAR and things. And then another is kind of anticipating how things will move based off of velocity. And then, you can categorize this into all sorts of tasks. Something that robots can already do right now is move things around in factories, right? Or we've got the automatic arms that move things in factories, but it's literally one motion over and over. We're getting to the point where now it can sort of do some other things. And what'll happen is things will get filled in over time. And I think AI, ChatGPT and shit, they do some of the intellectual side of this, So large language models are starting to fill it in, and it's gonna get filled in over time. with all these like small individual things. But then it's all gonna get connected, and it's gonna like be a lot of shit that can do like almost everything all at once in like a crazy short amount of time, and we won't even know what the hell's going on, right? And then it's like, oh, we've automated most of human labor. Bam. That's how I think it'll go. So once that happens, labor's out of the equation. Well, most people make their money by working. So what the fuck happens? And this is why I think geopolitics don't really matter as much, because most economies are going to become automated. Bang, bang, bang. Now, what does this mean? Coming back to my day-to-day, what I think about all the time, politics and rhetoric and what the fuck the parties need to do to get elected. Now, here's what I think Democrats have to do. Democrats, I think even a center right eventually will get to the point where if most people are not making their money through labor, we can't have this, egalitarian like haze that we think the world works that way, right? We can't actually have it where we think meritocracy is happening, because it'll be very obvious that it's not. I think right now most people will say meritocracy is obviously not happening, but we use the concept of meritocracy to justify so many of the political things and the economic system that is, right? So, and again, that comes from World War II, when actually it was relatively meritocratic. It's just gotten significantly less meritocratic as time has gone forwards, which is part of why like boomers and our grandparents do think you can just pull up your bootstraps, because they were more able to pull up their bootstraps in their generation. Okay, returning. So as this becomes the case where it becomes like, I don't know, 10% or even lower, and most money is going to capital, right? What the fuck happens? One, we're gonna need potentially like some sort of socialist revolution where, we either make most capital public and then we provide basic services, or we redistribute such that everyone has like a relatively equal amount of capital, or at least an amount of capital that they can get all of their basic needs and like quality of life off of, right? I think Democrats will have to do that. I think anything else will be political suicide. I even think Republicans might do this. So I think, what does that include in terms of like the actual policy side? Like I said, universal services. So I would say like, maybe that's housing vouchers or just public housing. Everybody has an amount of money to live somewhere, and everybody gets like a daily food voucher. Like genuinely, how long do you think it'll take to automate Taco Bell? I don't think Taco Bell will take very long to automate, personally, once we get all this shit going in there. Or like maybe just 2 people are running the Taco Bell instead of like 10, right? So everyone gets food, housing. I would even say income, universal basic income. What's missing? Education. Like all of these things will become free of charge to people through the government. I think that will have to happen. Because again, no one's gonna hire you to do shit if a robot can do it better. But I just don't know that the change will be fast enough that will like get to universal services and income and all of that as being something palatable, right? Because especially in the US, we're just so horny to never give people anything. We hate handouts. It's like our number one thing that we're against, right? Again, rhetorically, over to the window. But that's what needs to happen. Otherwise, there's just gonna be widespread poverty. And we already are like getting into more poverty. I haven't even talked about how this will affect the third world. And I don't know what the Republican stance on this will be either. Like what does the right do when labor doesn't bring in income anymore? Do they just say, sucks to suck? Like that will win them votes. But simultaneously, fascist regime, right? Maybe they don't have to. Maybe it'll just be most people living on like subsistence. Maybe it'll be like Mad Max. Maybe it'll be like Cyberpunk. Who fucking knows? But, you know, that's where I get worried about like, okay, is Trump going to figure out some sort of way to like continue to stay in office after the election that kicks him out? Because I don't think Democrats will fumble that election. I mean, come on. Like I think they'll do well in the midterms, and then Donnie T will get kicked out of office, and then Democrats will have a chance to do it. Now here's the thing. I don't know if Democrats will be progressive, but eventually their platform, I think, will shift over to this, especially once the economy starts skyrocketing. But then it's like, we have so many people, especially boomers, who have, you know, 401ks. Are they going to be willing to like give up the stock market? Probably not. I should say like Thomas Piketty's solution to this, Mr. French economist, his thing is like we should have a tax on capital. We tax capital, which by force brings the return on capital down to be at least in line with the growth of the economy. Remember, if this was growth rate, this is going to be the most confusing part of this, I can tell. Because I haven't explained it very many times, so I was learning how to explain it while I was doing it. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here. Like I said, I don't think this will be terribly consequential, but it's something to note. It still feels big to me, especially because, like, I think of just the aesthetics. Like, the aesthetics of the U.S. is very much kind of how I imagine, like, the whole Rust Belt is. We feel like we're crumbling, very much so. Even our best metros, or our best, like, subways and things like that, don't look even close to what they have in Japan or China, right? On a purely aesthetic basis. It's all cars. It's all big and rough around the edges. That's how I described America the other day. It's all big and rough around the edges. So, this should be fine. It'll figure itself out. I don't think we're going to exist in an era of national domination anymore. However, this is why I wanted to bring it up. Where are some, I'm not even fucking joking, like extinction level shit. We could all die. Who knows? So one is runaway AI. It got the nuclear codes. And my red marker ran out of whatever. That happens. Or the USA, you know, in its a little fascist decline, is like, fuck you, nukes, then we're all dead anyways, right? Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hasn't happened yet, but it could. Climate crisis is also a possibility, but genuinely that's not, I think, our biggest existential threat at the moment. Still definitely is. Still definitely is an existential threat, don't get me wrong. Not to mention, like, renewable energy is just more efficient than, like, fossil fuels. I fully believe that. So, if we don't die, then we have to figure out a way to start advocating for this, which we should already, I don't know, be advocating for anyways. Like, I think we have the economic productivity to do that now, but it'll become inevitable. And I don't know, what do I do about it? These are all just big macro trends that I look at. And I don't know, like, so much of, especially this area is very unpredictable. I think the economics are kind of going to continue going as they will. The politics and the rhetoric are also sort of unpredictable. I don't know what the Democratic Party will do. I think I've seen a lot of progressive movement right now. I'm thinking especially about the New York City election that's coming up with Zoran, and I hope he gets elected. We love him. And I think about Tim Walz, AOC, people who are actually popular amongst the Democratic Party base and more broadly popular with the American people as well. But who knows? Maybe Chuck and Nancy and all the top Democrats will continue to saw our legs off. And then we can get another fascist regime after Trump, which would be super great. And that, I think, would potentially get us to this sort of situation or to a cyberpunk situation once we do the whole singularity bit. And then it all comes back to politics, which is where I say, hey, I'm gonna run for office someday, go vote for me. Because I would love to. That's why I'm in DC, to get some experience. But also, simultaneously, because of politics, we're starting to go through a recession right now, and we're getting unemployment increasing, and now the job market is fucked. Especially my job market, because Donald Trump fired all the fucking federal workers, and they all know something about politics. So, who knows if I'll get a job? So I think I made this partially for catharsis. And partially because eventually I want to be able to look back and say, ha, I vindicate myself for feeling right at the moment. Because this is what I do think is going on. But we'll see. And I hope I have a successful career in politics. I have to get good at this stuff. I have to get good at the rhetoric. And I also think I have to tell it like it is. I think if I just say this shit to people, they'll be like, makes sense. But there's a lot of shit to get in a soundbite. Most people don't care enough. I have to figure out how to communicate this in little bits and pieces that I throw out to people. And I also have to build any political capital first. So I don't know how that's gonna happen. But there's my bit. There's my shtick. This is what I think is going on in the world. This is what I think it'll be like. I think we need to address stuff based off of this. And I think once we get to this, where we're providing universal services, we're also gonna have to deal with a crisis of meaning, where everyone will probably just be like smoking weed and like jerking off and staying at home all day and getting depressed. We're already doing that a little bit right now. I know you know. But we're gonna have to deal with that even more, which will be interesting. But I think that's gonna be like the human nirvana. Like when us as a big old collective social superorganism is at a state of rest, finally, where we have enough. But who knows, maybe the AI will become conscious. I'm not even pointing to that to say like kill us all. Maybe it'll be like something bigger after humanity will come. I don't know. That's none of my business once we get there. Anyways, that was my bit. Thank you for listening. Please get involved in politics and support progressives. And don't get caught up in the social side of politics. I'm non-binary, and I didn't say that even a single time until right now. And this whole thing was about politics. So, bam. Anyway, that's all I have. I think I'm going to post this to YouTube and see if it pops off or not. I don't think it will, but maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe people will like this. Bye.